to do something about the Pallavas, relationships between the Pallavas and the Kadambas. I thought it may be very easy job because Pallavas for a short time that is have an interaction. But actually, when I went to the subject, I saw it is numerous inscriptions, cross inscriptions where there so much of you have to do work. It is not fit for a elderly person like me. Maybe for a young scholars could take it. But anyway, with the available, of course, at that time I was in the US. So whatever the available inscriptions were available, whatever possible prescriptions are available with me, I could make it. Of course, it is a very interesting subject. Because the Pallavas were also there for more than for about relationship, maybe 500 years with these people. But Pallavas disappeared from the scene earlier than the Kadambas. Of course, I am talking about the late Pallavas, the late Kadambas, but you are talking about the early Kadambas who were there in the scene, that is till the beginning of the other Kadambas and others. But the interesting aspect is, of course, all the dynasties, of course, from the morning we are all talking, that is produced great epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and influence on all the kings. Of course, Ramayana himself claims he is from, of course, Ramayana says he is Ikshaku. They are all from Surya. If you go to Mahabharata, they are all from Chandra. The Indra, Chandra, all comes, so it is proud to them to call themselves as the rulers. And of course, if it is not factual, it is fictitiously very important. And also, it gives some scope for us to interpret and read. Even they try to trace their origin to sun, moon, and with intention to boost the morale of their, of course, the followers of the representatives. They were rulers who had challenges the supremacy of Indra. Indra generally, that is, take it granted and they take it super Indra. So the Bridus, generally, there are so many, even for in these inscriptions and in the Pallava inscriptions, of course, Magadha had 236 Bridus. Among them, about more than that is 25-30 is a challenge directly in the god, Indra, Chandra, like this, Pallava Tilaka, Kadamba Tilaka, like this. Varuna Pasa, Mahendra Prakasa. These are all some of the things to boost themselves to the higher status and also to give boost to their followers. Of course, here in Kadambas, that is the mystic origin of Kadambas. Of course, there are some mystical evidences. Kadambas and Pallavas are also almost analogous. If you see of course, even the Pallavas came late or earlier, even the Telugu Pallavas, Telugu area was there, they came to Tamil Nadu. Those are things I'm set aside because I focus only on the Kadambas and Pallavas, the relationships, and also how they fought and how they entered their fight and how they became more friendly countries. Even though some of the records are few centuries later in Pallava, Victoria's exploit, it is fascinating with certain amount of fiction. Of course, fiction is there always. Of course, according to one of these tales, the Kadamba derived their descent from three-eyed and four-armed Kadamba. It comes in the descriptions. And so, who sprang into beings from the drop of sweater that fell on the ground. And God set up Shiva under the Kadamba tree. The Kadamba who was sculptured is the pure and high learning begot Mayuravarman. Of course, Mayuravarman, the trace from that particular palm. Of course, these are all echoed in some of the Pallava publications also later. But Pallavas also have a similar origin. It's interesting to note that later Pallava inscriptions mentions the king named Trilochana Pallava as one of the most illustrious and Pallava ruler. He is also given the names of Trinayana Pallava. This title comes there. But probably they want to compare themselves with Shiva. He is supposed to be the founder of at least Telugu Pallavas, Telugu area Pallavas, and described as having the third eyes in the forehead, maybe like Shiva. This is only maybe a fascinating description. It's worth noticing, nevertheless, the Trilochana Kadamba makes its appearance in the epigraph Cosmorus same time. That is mentioned by Meenakshi in the book on Pallava administration. Major, okay, so this work notice, obviously, I have done this. Major and minor dynasties. In the morning we are seeing, of course, our guest scholar also asked how only the Cholas are projected as in the south and now no other dynasties. More inscriptional evidences, more material evidences are available. Generally they project. That's all. Of course, that we are doing, but the major dynasty may become minor. Of course, Cholas were so great as he appreciated, but they suddenly disappeared in 12th century, end of the 12th century AD. So that happens. That is in the history. It happens to all the dynasties. In that respect, that is which was considered as a minor dynasty or minor rulers of the south, the Kadambas. That is, they were relegated to very minor positions, but they came to power. Now, as we are conducting this seminar, they may get a proper place in the history of Karnataka also, because I am seeing all the developments. Of course, I am associated with Karnataka for the past 55 years. My first postings were at Halebide. So from that time onwards, somehow I am associated. Wherever I go, I will get a Karnataka friend, a Kannada friend. I don't forget Kannada. Of course, I left Canada about 1975. I left to Delhi. Of course, he was with me. Padekar was with me in Delhi. We worked under H. Sarkar. So we somehow were associated with Karnataka. So I know I see the development, of course, in studies, in the research that is going on in a high speed. But there is reason why you are all meet and give so many inscriptions have come after is what I studied in my library, small library in Halebide, that is Epigrammatica Karnataka. Now so many inscriptions have been published recently, so many publications have come. They have good science, of course. At that time, every time we would go to Mysore to study, and also there is Sashadin was there who will guide us. So now it is change in circumstances you are seeing that is how that is we are going to research. Change from hand to hand, the dynasty, and the rulers became the monarch, and also the process of changing is taking place in historical place. Similarly, we are taking in writing the history also now. Of course, the earliest the reference of the Kadambas, as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, that is we get from that is K. N. Subramaniam, one of the greatest epigraphists of the last century. He has published in 1930s a long article on Kadambas in Tamil. He has written that his Kadamba family of South have got a very minor status, of course. Archaeological records of that time, the cultural history of region K. N. Subramaniam were renowned epigraphists wrote during 1930s. Of course, it may even pre-run your Kannada publications. He has written in Tamil a vivid picture of dynasty involving the supremacy and diplomacy of the Kadamba rulers and the really Pallavas. It came in Tamil article, very long article, that is, he summarized the origin and the victorious deed as a forerunner for many rulers of the later period. And the strategy adopted by this, of course, Kadamba was appreciated by him. Kadamba Pallava period. Of course, this is the political scenario for the 4th century, 9th century. In the morning, we are seeing how it is changed. So, if you see, only I am confining myself to the Pallavas. You see, it can be divided into this 4 periods. One is Kadamba. Of course, Mayura Sarman's ventures and cordial relationship with Pallava, because he becomes enemy, but he becomes friend also the latter, very close to them. From Mayura Sarman to Krishna Varman, there is a period of supremacy of Pallavas. Pallavas just controlled of course, Kadambas, of course, in one way or other. Of course, Vishnu Varman as universal lord defeating Pallavas. Of course, Vishnu Varman, of course, there are so many disputes about whether Vishnu Varman the same or not. That is, we are not going. But there was one Vishnu Varman of Kadamba, that is who defeated the Pallava rulers, and he became superior, and he helped the Pallavas. That comes. Of course, it's marital relationships. That was the end of the dispute between the two. 4 periods. So first is Kabakula. So Mayura Sarma. Of course, you are all well know about the Mayura Sarma. A person of Manavya Gotra, well versed in Vedas and 6 Sanghas. That is, led very disciplined life. and adjacent to their home, there was a full-blown Kadamba tree. It comes in the descriptions, Kadamba tree. It was nurtured and preserved by his family members, and the family was identified as Kadamba with the Kadamba tree, and the family was known as Kadamba Kulam. That is the reason. Of course, some people say maybe about the Kadamba tree itself became the origin for the Kadamba Kulam. The progeny of that family, Mayura Salman, self-disciplined and versed in Vedas, and for further studies, that is for acquiring knowledge. He travelled with his preceptor to Kanchipuram, because Kanchipuram at that time was a Gedikasthana or a university. So he went there just to get the higher educations and to know more about the Vedas and the Angas. Of course, there he became, that is when he went there, he found he was not treated properly by others. Not because of he is from other country, but because he was a Brahmin. Of course, there is Manavya Gotra itself is a disputable Gotra, because Manavya Gotra there is no. Of course, we are finding some earlier kings also on Manavya Gotra. So Manavya Gotra, I tried to see the rishis, but it's not clearly mentioned in any of the Dharma Shastras about the rishis, because rishis are very important for the Gotra. Each and every Gotra will follow 3 or 5 rishis who have formed that Gotra. But this Manavya Gotra I tried to find, but there is a reference that they in the Dharma Shastra they belong to these Atharva Vedins. Every person has to wear one Veda at least. Trivedi is there. Maybe 3 Vedas his family has modified. Now this is things maybe Atharva Veda, but his enemies, Gatika in Kanchipuram, made him to revolt against the well-set Brahmin road, which depended more on the ruling Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas were superpowering, that is Brahmins. The Brahmins are to be under the control of Kshatriyas. So he was very much worried. That is why we all know so much, we learn Vedas, we do yajnas for them, but we have to depend upon their commands. So he determined to shun away the priesthood and other ritualistic deeds of Brahmins and transformed himself into a ruling clan. It's different from these our regular what we call Itigasas or even Puranas, where Vishwamitra wanted to become a Brahmin. So that is he got the power of, he saw the power of other Brahmins, and also he saw this Vasishta's power. So he thought, I should become a Brahmin. So he did penance, and he did, of course, Vasishta himself called him as a Brahmin or a Brahmajna. So then he only thought this knowledge should go to others, and according to the even Vedas, according to this, he rather made this Gayatri Mantra, so that the entire society will survive out of this mantra. That was he made the mantra. That comes in many of the Puranas also. So he thought that why should I be a Brahmin? I should become a Kshatriya. So the hand which was holding, of course, if you see this inscription, was holding this kusha, grass, and also these other things for yajna, performing yajna. He held this sword, and he revolted. So Mayura Salman's strategy. So with the sword in his hand, he stayed away from the region of up to Sri Sailam, and he conquered, annexed the western provinces of Pallava. Maybe it's not very clear, but western provinces it says. So maybe the Pallava region. So that is the reason the Pallavas were very much worried. They paid levies to him, and Pallava rulers attempted to hold him under his control. The Pallava rulers went and tried to overpower him, and he started from Kanchipuram with a large military force. In a surprising move, he attacked the entire army during the midnight and disappeared. He attacked and killed the entire army more or less, and he disappeared. So the Pallavas were defeated. Pallavas could not proceed. The Pallavas found that it was a great problem to hold him further. So they negotiated, but he was not legends and. So he became a Brahma Kshatriya, because he was a Kshatriya, he became a Kshatriya, but he is a Brahmin. So the Brahma Kshatriya title remained with the Pallavas also for some time. That is, with the sword in his hand, he stayed, of course, it only disappeared. Of course, he was, by his heroic activities, and the Pallavas, being satisfied by his victorious deeds, enthroned him as the ruler of the west coast of the kingdom with the reverse prakaram. This was the eastern territory. They fixed the territory and give him. That is the kinghood. It is recorded that they were coronated with the grace of Kartikeya. Of course, Satyamurthy. There it is in the inscriptions. Of course, it is even for Pallavas, Kartikeya, the Somaskanda was the main and devotion. They had a devotion for Somaskanda. It's an interesting aspect. Their appellations. Of course, they say even though he did so much of this thing, became a Kshatriya. That's Pritikirta Swadhyaya Charcha Prakaranam. He continued not only his successors also continued this, that is Swadhyayam, means learning their own Vedas and continued. Because one of the reasons why he became revolt may be the Atharvana Vedin. Atharvana Veda teaches more about the revolt or fight or anything may be there. Even we know the other miracles are done only through the Atharvana Veda. Probably he thought his mind worked out of the Atharvana Veda, so he won over the area and became of course the source for lineage. If you see, that is from that. Of course, I am restricting only to the Pallava, till the Pallavas then. Mr. Mayuravarman, of course, his government is there in the scriptures. And Bhagirath, Mamining, also they have shown the genealogy as Kapishtavarman and Sandhivarman, other of Talagunda pillar inscription. This inscription only mentions all these streets. Of course, there are some other cross references also. There are references in some of the early Pallava inscriptions also. Of course, Kadambakulam and Mayuravarman's ventures cordial relations with the Pallava. Of course, there the political scenario we see that is they have cordial relationships. The Chandravali inscription also substantiates it, tells the same story more or less, but it mentions, of course, in the morning also somebody pointed out that is Mayuravarman, Sanman is changed in Mayuravarman according to some of the readings. Maybe he has changed his title also because he became a Varma. Varma is a title to the Kshatriyas. Sarma is a title to the Brahmins. Maybe he has changed in the inscriptions, but we are not very sure. Of course, it is the tank constructed by Mayura Sarman. Of course, Sarman is disputed, and in the morning somebody protected this only Mayura Varma. Maybe of the Kadambas who defeated so many kings, including the Pallavas. So this is that inscription. Of course, this calligraphy he is going to talk tomorrow. This is a Talagunda pillar inscription. Kadamba territory. Kadambas supremacies. Of course, tank constructed by Mayura Sarman and the Kadambas who defeated all these people. It became historically important because that is they worked for public also. That is. Second phase, you see, the first phase was the supremacy of the king Mayuravarman. The Sandhivarman, the other of the Talagunda scriptures, was succeeded by so many people. Mrigeswarman, and of course, the morning also, in the afternoon also, they showed the genealogy, who possessed renowned widespread fame. He is said to have defeated the family of Tungagangas and was very fair to the Pallavas. The scriptures mention because Pallavas are very terrified by him. However, this is not supported by Pallava scriptures. May not be Pallavas. Of course, we don't. The problem is the Pallavas don't have many inscriptions of the surrounding, the relationship with the surrounding areas, except they have the chronology and also of course, the supremacies in their inscriptions. Their thing is more for public, of course, on the inscriptions and the grants given. Of course, here also, but they give more. The Sanskrit portion deals with their genealogy. The second portion deals with the Tamil, mostly in Tamil. The inscription, Tamil, I think, am I correct? Or Tamil was Tamil. It is more on these things. Then Kumaravarman is a successfully established independent kingdom in the east. In historical accounts, praise him as Kumaravarman. Of course, the great king, King Kumaravarman. Maharaja, Kumaravarman Maharaja. Morning also, the Maharaja and Raja, difference between Maharaja and Raja will be our English scholar Kegade. So it is not very clear whether the East Kadamba kingdom annexed was from Pallava region. However, the supremacy in eastern side was established. Then Krishnavarman, that is ruler of Dakshinapada, it was given a position. Yes, very jewel among the excellent kings. It comes in the inscriptions. In the excellent kings and performed Aswamedha sacrifice. Okay, this is also disputed whether the Krishna Brahma performed the sacrifice. So in the morning somebody tell why Brahmin should come here. That is not the case, but it is in the inscriptions. We have to take it. But Mayuravarman also performed that is the Aswamedha that comes, but it is being questioned whether Mayuravan, because it is not there in Talakunda inscription, so it is being questioned whether that is he performed Aswamedha or not. But Krishna Brahman should have performed. Towards the end of his reign, he suffered. It's very important turning point for the Pallavas. Towards the end of his reign, he suffered an inevitable defeat in the hands of Pallavas. According to inscriptions, report from Davanagari Tower, it was disastrous battle that his army was totally defeated by the Pallava kings. The result of this battle seems to be that the Krishna Brahma remained till his death under the political tutelage of Pallavas. This is the turning point, and there is from the Kadambas to Pallavas again. Pallavas started, that is gaining power from the Kadambas. If not power, at least they had the control over the Kadambas. In the succeeding period, there are so many problems comes within the family. That is, suppose there are two lineage. Of course, morning also we have seen some lineage was discussed. Of course, in this prelude, when Krishna died, some other king of feudatory of the elder branch of the Kadamba, the two branches of the family, tried to prevent Vishnuvarman's succession to his father's throne. Vishnuvarma has to come to the throne, but he was prevented. So, the Kadamba king Vishnuvarman refers in this regard to the fact that he was crowned by a king, by a Pallava king. Of course, recently also, in the afternoon also somebody told, I think, Senapati of Vishnuvarman built a Vishnu temple according to Urvapalli's copper plate inscriptions, the Pallavas. There it is mentioned, that is the great Yuva Maharaja of Vishnu Gopa, that is constructed and given a grant, and also constructed temple. This even heralds the cordial relationships existing between the Pallava kings. Of course, this was a map prepared by Meenakshi in her book Administration of the Pallava country. Of course, she has written a book. Throughout his rule, he was dependent on Pallava support. This is also supported by the government plates. He was succeeded by Simhavarman and Mandata, known as Mandirvarma. But he was for support of the Pallavas. He continued. But Ravi Varman, of course, morning we also listen. It's a great period for the Kadambas, again a turning point. At the time of death of Mandata, the throne of Kadamba was again occupied by Ravi Varman for the main branch, a representative of the main line of Kadamba Kola. Ravi Varman was Nigesas who had the supposed his rights. Somebody has the earlier king has taken his rights. Of course, the new king seems to have come to the throne at a very early age. The prince being very young, the Pallava and the Ganga kings who had been vanquished by his father, Nagesa, tried to retaliate by encroaching on Kadamba territory. They also appear to have provided upon his relations with Vishnuvarma to make bid of the sovereign of the northern part. But what happened? He is regarded as a king who possessed a blameless and mighty regal power, and had been secured by the strength of his own arm. Of course, he also Halsi plates also mentions. By his mighty power of 40 years he ruled, according to that. He is consolidated the Kadamba rule and brought the end to the Pallava Ganga supremacies in the regions in the early historical period. Of course, there are now and then Chalukyas also come and they go. That's recorded in some of the scriptures. Records are not lacking to show that Chalukyan rulers continued their operations over Kadamba rulers, but the rise of the Kadamba of Goa, later period, that is that it stops. But again, as Ravi Varma's time is over, the Pallava Rashtrakuta, of course, relationship comes. It is appealing to note that during the rivalry of Chalukyas, the Pallava rulers Nandivarman too, and date is given, was a little later than the earlier one, appears to have found asylum at Rashtrakuta court, assisted Dandidurga, the ruler of the Rashtrakuta, in many fierce fighting. He is stated to have married Rashtrakuta Princess Reva, who bore a son called Dandivarman. Of course, it is Rashtrakuta and relationship with the Pallavas. And Dandivarman, who he succeeded as Nandivarman in Pallava country. So he went to, and he was enthroned there. So Dandivarman married again Kadamba queen. So this, of course, Dandivarman married Kadamba princess. Mythic records affirms that the consort of Pallava king, that is Dandivarman, who ruled in the 8th century, was Kalamimadi, who is called cluster of the Kadamba family. That is well, even it comes in copper plate of Pallava copper plates also, well following plates, mentions about this queen who is superior. So thus as marital relationships, almost brought cordial relationships in Karnataka between the progenies of Chalukyas, Pallavas and Rashtrakuta and Kadambas. Of course, the consolidation of Kadambas rule in Banavasi and the branches in Hangal later in Goa, that is brought the end of the intrusion of Pallavas in the early period, another rulers. Of course, that was the end, because of course the Pallavas stopped coming about the end of 10th century, maybe with the entry of the Cholas, they disappeared. Of course, these later Kadambas continued for 2 more centuries. But now, we will go to the architectural point of course. The important thing that is we generally neglect when I joined the survey in Halebid, of course superintending archaeologist James Saundarajan, he took me to so many sites. One was this Kadamba sites also. He himself was, then only he wrote that book, gave the lecture, this early architecture of Kadamba and its ramifications, Karnataka and its ramifications. He gave a lecture in Dharwad University and published it also. So there he wanted to check something, he went. Of course, he used to tell that Kadamba's structures are earlier than all the structures in South India, if not in North. But that was his conclusion. Because of architecturally, see the problem with the architecture of Indian in toto, especially in South, is they will describe the temples. They will give the narration of the temples. They will give the architectural features. What is Upana, Stupi, Padyam, they will describe. But nobody says what is there inside. That is a problem. That is the architecture of the temples stand there because of their architectural features. That is, it's not merely because of this outstanding what you are seeing outside. It may be a beauty, it may be a decorating things, it may be there. But how it stands inside for thousands of years in spite of all these things. This Saundarajan used to tell, these Kadambas gave a basic model how to make a structure to be stable. So he used to tell, he used to show this. Of course, he published it also in his book. It is very, very short cover. This is the temple which you Magakot, small temple. But you see, 4 pillars are raised. Over that is only a slab, or the other small slab, and the Amalaka, what may be there. But it stands only on friction. There is no connection in between. All the temples, especially in South, stand out of any internal connections. It stands only on friction, on its own weight, and that is style. That is an interesting aspect. This is not, of course, you are seeing outside, but what is inside? So this is one of the early Pallava, of course, Kadamba Vimana. He asked me to see it and study it, and he showed me the problem is how they had the internal arrangement. Because mandavas can be made. Mandavas you can see from outside, but the internal arrangements, how the slabs are kept, even now as a conservation scientist, it's very difficult for us to conclude what's there inside. Of course, if you see the early temple, they were all, especially in Karnataka, there are only a single core or double core, but there is no core inside. Only blocks will be there. That is the reason why most of the 12th century, 10th century temples have collapsed, because there is no internal connections. Of course, in later Pallava temples and as well as in Chola temples, there will be a wall running. Of course, outer block will be kept, inner block will be kept. They will fill up with that is earlier earth, and then they will fill up with brick bags and lime mortar. That will go up to a level. Even Tanjavur, up to 2nd level it goes. That is the reason why it is studied. But in these Kadamba temples, you can see these are all simple slabs kept, that is in diminishing order. This shows how this equilibrium was, that is, the pressure was there, and also this, what you call is a type of engineering skill by which they made it appealing like a structure, but it's consolidated as a solid inside. Of course, when the Pallavas, they are very much contact with these Kadambas, they learned this technology, but when they switched to, because when the Kadambas were constructing their temples, Pallavas were not there in the process of constructing temples. They were only, only rocket temples. You see, these are the temples, of course, I will come to this. These are the rocket temples, so they don't have any problem for structural aspect. Of course, maybe stability will be there, nothing will be there. But when they started constructing the structural temples, the short temple, you are seeing here, short temples, how to make this balanced one, how to make it consolidated one, so that it is strong. So they saw these temples standing on its own weight, and also there is friction. There is friction between the two blocks will hold it. So in this temple also, in the short temple, first time we are seeing. Of course, later the Pallavas changed, but in the short temple, it is the blocks only were kept. And inside it is filled up. That is completely, there is a sleeping lamp, because they are not, you can see here. Completely the Kadamba architecture, which is, of course, I am not telling this Soundarajan's observations. So he used to tell, these are all that is copied there. Of course, they take the technology, not copied, we can say. The technology there, they made solid. This was the thing which the Pallavas followed. This was from the early Nagapattinam, where you can, of course, it was conjectural view, how they would have constructed the upper tiers with the corbel. You can see the corbels. The corbels are all these arches. The arches are all not the true arches of Mughal nature, but they are all corbels. So if they want to stand in an area, they will select it and put the corbel, either brick or stone. These are brick corbels. There will be stone corbels also. This is inside view of any of the temples you can see. They are corbels. Of course, this is nothing. There are so many papers going to be there on the coins. Of course, this is the thing which is in the coins. Of course, the calligraphy, tomorrow, I think, Shavi Sankar is going to talk about this topic. Of course, about the Pallavas also copied this, making the inscriptions, more or less the inscriptions, what you call in Chandra, in Kadamba area. The same style you can see. Maybe the language may be different, but it's Pallava Granda, but it may be a different language, but the style is same. But in most of the things, that is, they have taken this and copied it, not copied, it's whether recaptured and did it there. But the architectural feature, it is very important even for Karnataka monuments, Karnataka temples. That is, the stability depends only upon this, the blocks which they kept outside only, because there is no inner wall, that is including Alibid where you have seen it. So that is inner wall is there, it will strengthen it, but at the same time it is standing. Most of the Vimanas have fallen down because the inner wall was not there. If it is, the friction is more. Because the advantage of having the corbel is, if there is, of course, earthquake, that is, it will not fall inside, it will fall outside. Because the thrust will be on outside, the corbel will give thrust outside. That is the reason why you are seeing in the south, mostly, that is, the temple will not be there, but the linga will be there. Only the linga will be there, temples would have fallen. Vishnu will be there, others will be fallen. Of course, I have taken much of your time. I don't know, you crossed it. But anyway, this is a good opportunity for me to revise some of the things.